I hope everyone had a really great Thanksgiving and welcome back. I hope the week off was helpful to you and that you were able to either focus on family or focus on other classes or just have a little bit of time away. But we're going to dive into our very last chapter this week, chapter 17. Next week we'll have a short week in which we'll debrief the course. It'll be a very light week. And but this week will be a full one for you in our typical routine. And we're going to finish off by looking at chapter 17 in our textbook. The title of the chapter is Economic Growth, Technology, Ideas, and Institutions. And so it's a great chapter, I think, to finish on because it brings us back all the way to one of the central questions of macroeconomics. And that central question is, how do we make economies grow? How do they grow? What inhibits them from growing? But we might even massage that a little bit, and it's not just economies growing. Really what we're talking about is how do we make people better off? How do we improve people's well-being? So we'll be taking a look at that in this chapter and some ideas, and with a real focus on technology and how technology fuels economic growth, and a discussion also about institutions. What we mean by institutions are rules and government and the ability to engage in entrepreneurial activities. That's what we mean by institutions, or the formal and informal rules that govern economic behavior. And in some places like the US, those institutions are really strong. But in other countries where, like North Korea or Cuba, where they don't encourage it, or countries where there might be civil war, or countries like Afghanistan that are in a general state of war, those institutions aren't able to thrive. So you'll have a look at some of those things in this chapter. So let's take a look at the introduction here. And you'll have 2 Aplia problem sets due this coming Sunday. And then there's no quiz, but there is a discussion. The discussion is a little more involved this week, so I want you to dive into that right away. So let's talk first about the discussion. In order to engage in this discussion, we're going to kind of step away from the chapter because I wanted to share with you some really cool economic research that I think is some of the most exciting stuff that's happening in the subject. But it looks at, it's very similar to this chapter, and how do we make people better off in that theme. And we're going to look at research into how neighborhoods shape children. So in order to do the discussion, you'll need to dive into the lesson. And in the lesson, you should start out and watch this 6-minute video from an economist named Roz Chetty. And Roz has done some really amazing research, and this is going to explain it to you. His research is looking at why neighborhoods matter. In other words, he's figured out that it does matter where you grow up. It does have an impact on your future income. So as you go through this lesson, it's going to lead you to what's called the Opportunity Atlas. And this is a data tool that Chetty has created. And the Opportunity Atlas, which he's going to explain a little more in the video and what it means, it basically has taken all of this big data and condensed it into neighborhoods. So let me explain what I mean. Your job in this discussion is to explore your own particular neighborhood. They're divided by census tract, so you can't dive into maybe your specific block or network, but I'm going to focus in on this one. This is a tract in Transylvania County. And you can, by clicking on that tract, you'll see a variety of interesting data that looks at all sorts of different things that are explained in the video. And what I want you to do is to compare your neighborhood where you live. So for me, I actually live in Asheville. And because population is a little bit bigger, you can dive down a little bit deeper. This is actually the tract that I live in Asheville, or maybe you live in Hendersonville, or maybe you're down here in Polk County. or wherever. And I want you to compare your neighborhood to another one using this data tool. I want you to explore this data tool and just dive in and see what it tells you about exploring why it matters where you live. So in the discussion, what you'll do in your post is you'll look at two neighborhoods, and I want you to just explore that data, play around with it. What does it tell you about the future prospects of where you grew up relative to another place, either in North Carolina and California, or maybe a place where your grandparents are from, or some connection that you have to another place. And I want you to explain the data that you found, talk about it a little bit, and then finally in your post include a specific policy you would suggest based on that research, right? What would you do? You'll see that Roz Chetty talks about, hey, we can't move people to different neighborhoods necessarily. Can't move everyone. Some people can. But what we can do is we can look at places where children achieve high rates of income, and we can mimic some of those policies. Do they have to do with schools? Does it have to do with safety? Does it have to do with the various institutions that exist in those particular neighborhoods? What's driving that wealth creation as opposed to what's constraining it in other neighborhoods? So you're going to do some work as an economist here. You're going to dive into data and see what it tells you. All right? So Chapter 17 is also an involved one. There's some slightly new models that you'll be looking at. I would suggest using the technology tool. You'll learn about why GDP matters. We're going to talk about GDP per capita. I think there's some good videos in there. So I think you'll learn a lot, and it'll give you a broader perspective of returning to that central question of why economic growth matters, what it means to the well-being of families, of individuals on a macro level, like on a national level, as well as on a neighborhood or family level. So I hope you enjoy this, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the discussion so we can talk about the various data that you're finding about your neighborhoods. If you're having any trouble at all with using that Opportunity Atlas, I don't expect you to be a pro with it. The data may not even make sense to you. That's okay. Your goal is to play around with it, see what you can find, and see what you can learn, and then we'll come to some conclusions about what it means. All right, folks, so have a great week. I'll be looking forward to seeing you. Next Monday, we'll have a final video, couple of debrief activities, and then the semester is done. So if you have any questions at this point about your grade or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me, and stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you online. Bye now.